to a panel with Jane Espenson, and she was talking about how the writing on Battlestar was very collaborative with actors and everybody giving input. So I was just curious if any of your ideas or suggestions had a major impact on your character's storyline.
Yeah, I suggested space. Yeah, because initially it was Colorado. It was just like...
It was called Baltarado.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, let's change that. I suggested Baltar style Galactica, they didn't go.
No, there were lots of instances. There were, I mean, you know, too many to really. We all had moments, right? So I'm trying to think of one that I. Well, that huge speech in the trial wasn't as huge. It was like a 4-line speech, and I thought this could be really long. So I wrote the other 600 lines. But you know, Mark Verheiden set the tone, wrote the thing, and I just basically did that thing that actors should never be allowed to do, which is say what's really on their mind. Because less is more normally, and you don't want to verbalize the non-verbal, but I did. So that was one, and Michael Rimo was just a ridiculous director who said, that's a good idea. Yeah, that's one for me. But
yeah, I mean, all of us, I think, all of the time, that was part of the. It was collaborative, and I've said this a few times. I don't mind saying it again either. That I think it's terribly special when the people who are in control can be so generous, because on some level, you know, we're paid to say the lines and just do it. And we've all been in jobs where, like, you know, there's somebody on the set who's a script supervisor, nearly always, or continuity, and they really can come up to you after the take and say, yeah, you said and, you're supposed to say the, change that back. And we never ever had anything like that on Battlestar, so it was part of, I think, the people who were, the powers that be, were profoundly generous to embrace us and the ideas. And I think it was always about making the show as wonderful as it can be, because sometimes people have a weird political agenda, like they want to change something, but that's not really got anything to do with the scene, or it's got something to do with them, and what they want to say or change and do could be detrimental. So that's not the way it was, and we're very lucky.
I tried to talk them into letting me go into the Viper and have the flashback. Actually, I actually did, and I was, you know, it's amazing that they are very collaborative, because of course I had one of the hardest scenes I ever had to do, which was killing the quorum, and initially the quorum was for me. They were in agreement after I give that big speech, and they wrote it that way, that they're in agreement, and then I walk out and say kill him, and I go, why would I do that? Because in a coup, you know, you have to take out anybody who's against you, right? So I said, really, I would never do that. Zarek would never do that. I said, they have to be in disagreement. That's the only way I could ever do that. So they changed it, you know, that was great. And then I also found, I got to work with Ron Moore, directing his first episode. And I don't know how many, did he direct any more episodes than one? Did he do more? Just one? I was amazed how good he was, and it's nice because obviously he's the, you know, head writer. So, you know, there was all this kind of dialogue and stuff in the scene with Eddie, and he was very willing to change things and take things out, put things in. And so we shifted a lot of things around in that scene, and that made that scene really work really well for me. The only thing that I wanted to do and couldn't do was I wanted to reel off, after he reels off this list of things I did, you know, I wanted to reel off all the things that he did.
But that's exactly what I got to do.
Oh, you did?
Well, in that courtroom thing. I just got to tell everyone
right.
jackass everyone was.
you.
And do not judge lest you be judged, basically.
Yeah, wow.
But yeah, no, I did it for you, don't worry.
Michael,
Yes.
you and Jamie are both married to actresses. How difficult is it to manage 2 acting careers in one marriage?
Oh my god.
Save that one for Monday morning, did you? Right on. I actually find it, contrary to popular belief, I find it, the relationship to run rather smoothly. I think the situation gets more difficult when 2 actors are married or also on the same job, especially a television series. It's different for a film because film is finite. It might be 3 weeks, it might be 3 months, but there's an end game in sight. I think if my wife and I met on a series and our relationship didn't get serious until the series was canceled. And I've always said I think that's probably the best thing that ever happened to our relationship was that the show got canceled. I just think that actors work well together in a relationship because we understand what each other's going through, but if you're on the same set, you drive to work together, you probably end up sharing a trailer together, you're in the makeup chair together, you're on set together, you go home together, and sometimes your whole world is so interconnected that you have no space, and it's nice to, if I'm working on a show and Sandra's working on a show, or I'm doing something and she's doing commercial, then you've got something to talk about. You can take a little breather and say, tell me what happened, tell me about your day. When you're stuck with each other for 27 hours a day, you know exactly what happened in each other's day, and then it might get really complicated. So I think the best thing that ever happened was that show got canceled. And our relationship has been strong ever since, but I enjoy it. I don't think it's a problem at all to both be in the same industry. I find it to be very pleasant, actually.
Thanks. This side.
Hi, this question's for James. Gaius Baltar was a not particularly brave or courageous character, but I think your performance as him was incredibly fearless, especially in conveying that weakness and fear, and I'm pretty sure you cried more than any other So I was wondering what it is that allowed you to conjure that emotion as the character, and was there ever a fear from you or other people involved with the show about going too far with that or not far enough?
It's an interesting question, and actually I hadn't thought of it like that. But yes, he was profoundly weak on lots of levels. I think that the crying and the whatever was, I was just trying to show that despite all of this stuff, the man, he did have compassion on some level for some things. I always said, he had a heart. It was like drilling for oil to find it. He did have one underneath all of that vanity. And I would actually, I find myself different to him in the sense of, I don't consider myself to be, I suppose he does, but I don't consider myself to be weak or in any way a coward. In fact, that's what, it's like if something's going to be said that shouldn't be said, I'm more than likely to say it, or I'm more than likely, I was just quoting something yesterday from Public Enemy, harder than you think, and there's this line in it about like, if you don't stand for something, then you fall for anything. And there's quite a few things that I'd like to think that I do stand up for, and that's the polar opposite with playing Gaius Baltar. I was crying and lots of stuff in this thing because if he didn't register with the extremity of what he'd done and what he had put upon everybody else, then that made him a monster. And I wasn't interested in being a monster. I had a great line in the mini-series right at the end when Trisha's like, you think that that's going to happen or something, because you can't be on our side if you do that, Gaius. And he had this wonderful line, he's like, I'm not on anyone's side. And I think that made him quite powerful in his own little vacuum, if if that makes sense. And like I say, crying a lot and whatever was to, I suppose, to get on some level sympathy from the people who are going to watch it. You know, that you're thinking that in the sense of, if it doesn't matter to this guy, and I think a lot of the time initially they'd written it that he was going to be this smooth weasel and he didn't really care. I was like, I can't really do that. I'm not interested in being that kind of a person. You know, like just the arch villain, they want to take over the world. Why? You know, there's, what's the personal motivation? So hopefully that answers the question.
This side.
Hey James, question for you. So one of the most physical episodes that I felt that you had experienced was taking a break from all your worries, the one that Eddie directed where Baltar is getting tortured. I wonder if you could talk a little bit of just filming that, you know, being dragged around, thrown under a pool, strapped down, basically they're just running you through the ringer physically, and you know, what that was like.
Well, firstly, you know, apart from being a wonderful man, and Eddie's a genius director as well. He's got like a color palette in his mind. He's got the mise en scène. He sets everything up. Yeah, he's somebody on that level, like not just to act with, but to work for it. He's incredible. And like Jamie says, like personally, he's an enabler, but that was his whole, you know, he's going to take it to the limit. He's going to absolutely push all of the boundaries. At the time, and I said this, you know, became very, very aware about all of the wars that are going on all around the world. And the awful thing is that right now people are being tortured. And so when you're doing something like that, and you're just acting, because it is just acting, you're very aware. I don't know, you don't want to take people's memory in vain. You don't want to, you're not setting this up like it was really serious. It was really, really serious. And you try and put yourself in a mental state where, you know, it's happening and you just want it to stop. It was a deeply rewarding thing to come through the episode. I remember actually being with you, with Jamie, and Jamie's wife, Kerry, and my wife. And there was something about, oh yeah, we're going back to do this episode. And I think my wife was like, yeah, we'll have a fun day at work. You know, honey, I'm actually being tortured today. And she was like, yeah. Yeah. Okay, James. Whatever. I didn't get on with her very well that day, I seem to remember. So yeah, we took it to the limit. Eddie wanted to do some really crazy things that I didn't want to do. I didn't end up doing, like having my eyes really taped up with like some metal thing stuck inside them. I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that. And then there was the only really amusing thing in that episode was the snake in the water. That was like, you know, basically a long piece of rope. And, oh, that was it, that's the funny thing. Eddie said initially, when he got the episode, the first thing, Eddie is serious about everything. And he's like, how are you with sharks? What are you talking about? I don't see any sharks in this episode. It's not a joke, like that. You know the aquarium, Vancouver Aquarium? Yes. We go in there. Stick you in the shark tank. Eddie, you batshit. That's we are not going to do. And actually, because I've been in the aquarium with my kids, like you can't even breathe over the water. They're so like, you know, anything from us could be, you know, infect the animals. Like. Somebody dropped their glasses. They were like looking over at the thing, and the glasses went into the tank, and they were like pulled out of like, you know, the security. The sunglasses were like, you're not allowed back in the aquarium, dude. How dare you? I'm like, so Eddie, we are not going near a shark tank. It's not really happening. So anyway, we did this thing with water, and there was this snake. I think it must have been really late, like 3 days in the water anyway, with like treading water and all this stuff, and we had to turn the lights down low because the snake just didn't look very real. In fact, there's a Bond scene where he has to kill her. he has to kill a snake. You can see it's like just a rubber thing, like, you know. I remember Ed, that's the only time Eddie kind of losing his patience slightly. He was like, you know, you really have to make it look like, you know. I'm like, yes, but it's like a rope. It's not even, it doesn't look. Anyway, that's